The bell shrieked, signaling the end of another long school day. But for 7-year-old Leo, the real work was just beginning. While other kids rushed home to play video games or watch cartoons, Leo had a much more important job. He was his mom's little helper, her rock, her everything. His mom, Sarah, was battling a serious illness that left her weak and often bedridden. So, Leo's after-school routine wasn't about homework and snacks. It was about chores, cooking simple meals, and making sure his mom took her medicine on time. He'd tiptoe into her room, a small glass of water in his shaky hands, and gently wake her. "Time for your medicine, Mommy," he'd whisper, his voice soft as a breeze. He'd help her sit up, fluff her pillows, and tell her about his day, always leaving out the parts where he felt tired or lonely. He wanted to be her sunshine, the reason she kept fighting. He'd read to her from her favorite books, his small finger tracing the words, until she drifted off to sleep with a faint smile on her face. The next morning, the exhaustion would hit him like a wave. In class, the teacher's voice would become a distant hum, the words on the board blurring into a fuzzy haze. His head would grow heavy, his eyelids feeling like they had weights attached. He fought it. He really did. He'd pinch his leg, bite his lip, anything to stay awake. But sleep was a relentless tide, pulling him under. One afternoon, it happened. He was fast asleep at his desk, his cheek pressed against the cool wood. A sharp rap on his desk jolted him awake. He looked up, disoriented, into the stern face of his teacher, Mrs. Davison. The entire class was silent, all eyes on him. "Leo," she said, her voice sharp and loud, "if you find my class so boring, perhaps you'd prefer to sleep in the principal's office." Giggles rippled through the classroom. Leo's face burned with shame. He wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He mumbled an apology, his eyes fixed on his desk, unable to meet anyone's gaze. This became a painful new routine. Nearly every day, Leo would fall asleep, and nearly every day, Mrs. Davison would single him out. "Looks like our little dreamer is off in La La Land again," she'd announce. Or, "Leo, is your bed at home not comfortable enough?" Each comment was a fresh stab of humiliation. His classmates started calling him Sleepy Leo. He began to dread school, the place he once loved. The weight of his secret, his mom's illness, and the public shaming was becoming too much for his small shoulders to bear. He never told his mom. How could he? She had enough to worry about. He didn't want to add his own troubles to her burden, so he endured it in silence, his heart growing a little heavier each day. One day, the school announced parent-teacher conferences. A wave of panic washed over Leo. He knew his mom was too sick to attend, and he couldn't bear the thought of Mrs. Davison calling home and upsetting her. He tried to hide the notice, tucking it deep inside his backpack, hoping it would just disappear. But that evening, as he was cleaning, the notice slipped out and fluttered to the floor right at his mom's feet. Sarah picked it up, her brow furrowed with concern. "Leo, what's this?" "A parent-teacher conference." "You didn't tell me." Leo's eyes filled with tears he could no longer hold back. The dam broke, and everything came pouring out: the exhaustion, the name-calling, the shame, who he was so tired, but he had to be strong for her. Sarah pulled him into a hug, her own tears mixing with his. Her heart ached for her brave little boy who had been carrying the world on his shoulders. "Oh, my sweet boy," she whispered, stroking his hair. "You should have told me. We're a team." Despite her weakness, a new resolve hardened in her eyes. "Don't you worry," she said, her voice firm. "I'll be there. I will go to that conference." The day of the conference, Sarah gathered all her strength. She dressed carefully, leaning on the wall for support. The walk to the school felt like climbing a mountain, each step a monumental effort. When she arrived at the classroom, Mrs. Davison looked up, surprised. "You must be Leo's mother," she said, her tone professional but cool. "I'm glad you could make it. We need to discuss Leo's performance issues." She began listing her complaints. "He's constantly falling asleep. He's inattentive. His grades are slipping. Frankly, it's a discipline problem. He's becoming a disruption." Sarah listened patiently, her heart aching with every word. When the teacher finally paused, Sarah took a deep, steadying breath. "Mrs. Davison," she began, her voice quiet but clear, "Leo isn't a discipline problem. My son is a hero. She then told her everything. She spoke of her illness, the long nights, the endless chores. She described how Leo managed the household, how he cooked and cleaned, how he was her primary caregiver. She explained that he wasn't sleeping in class because he was bored or lazy, but because he was up late, making sure his mother was comfortable, making sure she took her medicine, making sure she wasn't alone. He carries a burden that no 7-year-old should ever have to bear, Sarah finished, her voice thick with emotion. He doesn't sleep in your class because he doesn't care. He sleeps because he's exhausted from being my nurse, my cook, and my best friend. The room fell silent. Mrs. Davison's face, once so stern and judgmental, began to crumble. The color drained from her cheeks, replaced by a deep, painful flush of regret. Her eyes welled with tears as the truth of the situation hit her with the force of a physical blow. She had been shaming a little boy who was quietly performing acts of incredible love and sacrifice every single day. She saw not a lazy student, but a tiny, tired hero. I had no idea, Mrs. Davison stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I am so sorry. The apology was heartfelt, filled with a shame that dwarfed anything Leo had ever felt. The very next day, things at school changed completely. Mrs. Davison started the class with an announcement. Class, she said, her voice gentle. I owe someone a very big apology. I haven't been fair to Leo, and I was wrong. She didn't share the details of his home life, respecting his privacy, but she made it clear that she had made a terrible mistake. She looked directly at Leo, her eyes full of warmth and regret. Leo, can you forgive me? Leo, stunned, just nodded, a small, shy smile touching his lips for the first time in weeks. From that day on, Mrs. Davison became his biggest advocate. If she saw him looking tired, she'd quietly suggest he rest his head for a few minutes. She organized his classmates to share their notes with him. The name-calling stopped instantly, replaced by a newfound respect. The kids didn't know the whole story, but they understood their teacher had been wrong, and they saw Leo in a new light. The school, informed by Mrs. Davison, rallied around Leo and his mother. They connected Sarah with social services that provided a home health aid. They arranged for meal deliveries. A community of support blossomed around the small family, easing their burden in a way they never thought possible. Leo started to feel like a kid again. He still took care of his mom, but he was no longer alone. He had help, and that school was no longer Sleepy Leo. He was just Leo. A bright, kind boy who could finally keep his eyes open to learn, to laugh, and to dream not of sleep, but of a future where his mom was healthy and his heart was light. It's a powerful reminder that we never truly know the silent battles others are fighting. A little compassion can change everything. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that touches the heart.